Welcome to World Blockchain Capital Episode 5. I'm here with Mike Stenhouse. Mike, where do you work and explain what you do?
Well, after hanging out at my baseball spikes and becoming a big political junkie for the next 20 years, I founded the Rhode Island Center for Freedom and Prosperity in 2011. We are a part of the State Policy Network. We're the Rhode Island affiliate. We're independently owned as you would or established as a 501c3. But our job is to promote conservative and free market principles here in the state of Rhode Island as a think tank.
Great. And by the way, thanks for having me on your podcast on this past Tuesday. It was really cool.
Well, enjoyed having you on. You're a great guest, and you brought a lot of information that I don't know much about, and I don't think our viewers know much about. So we're going to have you back on if that's all right.
Yeah, and I'm a black conservative too. Look at that. And a libertarian.
Not too many of them either.
And I'm a small L libertarian, like I said before. So I'm a Republican Party member, just throwing that out there. So, well, how would you describe, besides that, how would you go into detail and describe your personal political philosophy besides just being a general conservative?
I was very naive in college. I went to Harvard University
Oh,
economics degree.
that explains a lot. Don't worry.
But it didn't. But I didn't. I don't recall it being indoctrination back then. This is in the late '70s. I was class of '80. And I can remember very distinctly in economics classes, we were honestly debating, how much is too much welfare? How much, when does welfare create dependency? And we had those back and forths, which, you wouldn't hear probably today in too many economics classes at Ivy League schools. But then I went into pro baseball, and that was 1980, and that was during the Reagan presidency.
You went to pro baseball?
Yep.
Which means what specifically?
Well, I was drafted by the Montreal Expos, signed with them, worked my way up through the minor league systems, and got to play parts of 5 different years in the major leagues with the Montreal Expos, Minnesota Twins, and here's my Boston Red Sox ring for the year I played part of the year 1986 with them. But those 8 years of my pro baseball career are exactly when Ronald Reagan was president. So that's when I started to develop my political philosophy.
That's good. As long as you didn't play with the Yankees, I'm fine with that. I'm actually a huge Red Sox fan. All New England sports. So anyway, Reagan. So a lot of people have different views on Reaganomics. You have the liberals on one side saying, "Oh, it didn't work. It led to a lot of poverty." Then you have people saying, "Hey, Bill Clinton, those years that you had all that growth was due to Reaganomic principles." What is your perspective on it?
No, absolutely. I mean, the Kennedy tax cuts of the '60s, the Reagan tax cuts in the '80s, and Trump's tax cut, 7 years ago, all led to enormous economic prosperity, wealth, and believe it or not, even with those tax cuts, increased government revenues. The problem with Reagan, and even to some extent with Trump's tax cuts, is in order to get those tax cuts, he was forced by the Democrat House to basically increase spending as well. So Reagan, that's the one criticism I have of Reagan's policies. But again, you can't get everything you want in politics. You got to compromise a lot. So that was the compromise that both Trump and Reagan made. I don't know about Kennedy.
Okay, my personal opinion. So I listen to Dan Bongino, which is on Fox News because a lot of people in the mainstream media don't really like his views. But he actually made a point that when Reagan actually cut taxes, there was more revenue because people don't mind paying small amounts of tax. But however, when you pay too much tax, people find ways to actually not have to pay those taxes, defer those taxes, or have write-offs.
Well, it's much more than that. That's true. But the effect that's 10 times that. When there's lower taxes, there's much more incentive to invest in businesses, to grow businesses. So that's why you get economic boom, not because people are willing to pay smaller amounts, because that's where supply side economics comes in versus demand side that the left believes. We believe that in order to have a booming economy as a conservative, you need to make it fertile ground for employers and business investment. So when you have low taxes, that's like adding fertilizer to the soil. A lot more people are going to invest and start to grow and expand businesses. When you raise taxes, it's like weeds. It's going to choke off. People aren't going to be, hey, if I'm paying 60%, 70% of my earnings, why would I take the risk? If I'm only paying 20, 30%, okay, now it's worth the risk.
Definitely. And I agree with you.
So that's the thing. It's the incentive to start and expand businesses or invest in businesses. And that's where tax cuts or tax hikes matter.
Okay, so I'm a minority, obviously, and I grew up, unfortunately, listening to a lot of liberals in my community.
Yeah.
So what would you say to the people that actually say, when you cut taxes on the rich, they don't actually grow businesses. All they do is reinvest their profits into the stock market, and that does nothing for the average person. doesn't create actual jobs. It just makes them richer. The wealthy are wealthy, more wealthy, and the people that basically are middle income, they just become poorer.
So you're kind of talking. You're almost even referring to what they call trickle down economics, where if you cut taxes for the
Voodoo economics,
rich.
you mean, or trickle
Yeah.
down economics?
Well, it's
Go
been
ahead.
called both. Trickle down economics is you only give tax breaks to the wealthy, and you hope that they invest in businesses, create more jobs, and all of that. Um, really, you talk to wealth, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a rising tide raises all boats. If you're going to have
Sounds like
tax,
Obama, by the way.
well, I don't know what he said, but if you have
Okay.
tax cuts for everybody, for the whole country, it will raise economic output. There's no question about it. All boats, rich boats, poor boats, middle class boats, they will all rise when you cut taxes across the board, like Trump did, like Reagan did, and I believe like Kennedy did in the 60s. So it's not trickle down economics. Reaganomics is not trickle down. He didn't just give tax breaks to the wealthy. He like Trump, gave them to everybody, and it worked. Now you're right. Clinton was influenced heavily by Newt Gingrich, who came out of the Reagan era. If it wasn't for Gingrich and it wasn't for a poor midterm election with Clinton, Clinton would have compromised with Gingrich. But Gingrich said, "Hey, for your own political good and for the country's good, you need to cut some taxes, do some conservative." And Clinton was smart enough to do that, and he won re-election because the country did better. But those were conservative policies that Clinton sort of was forced, or at least influenced, to adopt.
Definitely, he was more conservative during his second term.
Right.
So, what are like positions and what policies is your organization specifically advocating for in Rhode Island? Because let's be honest, Rhode Island is not a conservative state. They have a pretty big government. I believe, the last I looked, the biggest employer in the state of Rhode Island to this day is still the state of Rhode Island government. Correct?
Government, yeah. I don't know that as a fact, but probably true. We've actually in the last few years, Mike, we've gone away from our original charter, which was to conduct research, good research. We had a full-time research guy, Justin Katz, who was fabulous. Publish papers, trying to influence lawmakers. We used to go up to the Capitol Hill and testify on behalf of pro taxpayer bills or pro small business bills and against higher tax bills, higher regulation bills, and things like that. And but it became pointless. The General Assembly and our executive branch and our and all the appointees in the different bureaus and departments are 85 to 90% Democrat. They're increasingly liberal, progressive, not just moderate Democrats like we used to have in this state. And nobody wanted to hear it from us anymore. In the first 4 or 5 years, people would kind of listen to us. We never won major victories. We stopped a few bad bills, got a few small bills passed. But then the cancel culture kind of came in, and they just didn't want to hear it, and we didn't fit their narrative anymore. So we've gone away from trying to influence legislative public policy. That's why I'm not on top of things like I used to be.
That's fair.
We're more about trying to influence the public, which is why I have my show in the Dugouts, why we have the Ocean State Current, Adam the Annihilator, Larry the Liberty Guy. We're now trying to influence public opinion.
And now you have Mike Ray as the cryptocurrency guy, or at least World Blockchain Capital.
Yes, and
World.
you're going to be part of that raising awareness team. Yes.
Definitely. And I just want to go on that note. So I know a little bit about Rhode Island policies and the direction that the state assembly is taking. And my understanding was the former Speaker of the House, before he was dethroned, who was actually a Democrat, dethroned by a Republican, wasn't he like a moderate, really conservative Democrat?
See, this is the yes, but no.
What do you mean? I mean, I looked at his record, and he was always trying to cut taxes in his district, in the city of Cranston specifically, and just in general.
You're talking about Nick Mattiello, the former Speaker of the House, was defeated by former Mayor Fung's wife, Barbara Ann Fenton Fung. He took her out, I think, 4 years ago. Took him out 4 years ago, and now we've got Joe Shikarchi as House Speaker. Mattiello was clearly a moderate to conservative Democrat, but he said he was pro-life. He said he was pro-Second Amendment.
And supposedly, I'm not sure if this is true, on the low, he was a Trump supporter. But, obviously,
I don't know
that publicly because
I don't.
of the situation in Rhode Island.
I don't know that.
Just saying, throwing it out there.
Don't know that. Wouldn't be surprised. But here's the tragedy. I believe he was those things in his personal self. But the pressure from the left, the pressure from the media, the pressure from the progressive advocacy groups. He caved on both those issues. He caved on Second Amendment issues. He caved on pro-life issues just because of the internal political
And is
pressure.
that why he lost?
I think so. Because he didn't stand for, not everybody knew he didn't stand. He said he was going to be the firewall against the progressive left agenda.
And he wasn't, because I always thought he was, or at least that's what they made it seem to for
That was
residents
the-
of Cranston, my family members that live here in the state of Rhode Island.
That was the image he wanted to project, but he was the leakiest firewall you ever saw. It just leak, and
So
then
he was just a
big-
politician. That's all he was.
He was
He
just a
nothing more than that
in the end.
case.
He couldn't stand up. He wasn't strong enough to stand up to the pressure.
Okay, that's tough because I actually want to make a point. I know that this is not a topic that we're talking about today, but the lieutenant governor, who's Dominican American, correct?
Yep.
Our Dominican American community is very pro-life, very pro-business, and it seems like she's doing the same thing. Instead of advocating for policies that our community wants, she seems to be caving to the progressive left.
Now, I don't know enough about her. My view of Sabina Matos is that she's always been a progressive leftist. I believe she is publicly who she is.
Publicly. But I'm
Well,
saying at a
I
personal
believe-
level, when she comes to our community events, I saw at her funeral
Really?
months ago. Of course, yeah. Dominican Americans are pro-life. It's actually
In general, but is she?
Dominican
But
Republic-
is she?
I believe that personally she is, but professionally, like you just said about
Yeah.
this former Speaker of the House.
And this is the
advocates for
tragedy
progressive
of
left.
politics.
And does that, like, your organization, is there any way you guys can basically make politicians more accountable, regardless of party, to their constituencies and their people?
Well, you're right that somebody needs to do that.
Isn't that what you guys do?
We are a 501c3, which means we have to be careful when it comes to candidates. You know, it's almost always an election season when you're
Of
for
course,
election
especially
every
state
2 years.
representatives and U.S.
So
all
we
that stuff.
we tend to attack ideas rather than people. So to be safe, to not violate with our very fuzzy 501c3 IRS guidelines, we attack ideas, not people. Sometimes we have to
Give
reference
me an
a
example
person.
of 3 ideas. When I go out canvassing, I say pro-life, pro-Second Amendment, hate taxes, and sometimes if it's a really pro-Trump constituency, I'll say pro-Trump. What are your core beliefs? Like, give me a quick snapshot if you're talking to somebody.
Well, we've always been. I think we have been the state's leading advocate for school choice.
Oh, school choice. That's a big one.
That's a big one.
See,
Education.
now with education, where it's going, the direction it's going, where people are basically they're teaching children about gender identity and sexuality, and I don't like that.
And that also kind of bleeds into parental rights as well. So they're kind of interchange.
Unlike
there.
California, where Gavin Newsom basically took parental rights away, basically saying, "Hey, your children
Unbelievable.
they want to be whatever gender they want to be. The parents have no right to know."
Unbelievable. I mean, if you're going to push this controversial and divisive agenda in our public schools, just think of the tragedy that you then force, because most families can't afford to move to a better district. Most families can't afford private school or don't have the time or expertise to homeschool. So not only are you pushing this controversial agenda on families, and that's okay if people want that for the kid, that's fine. But for those who don't want it, now you've almost locked them in and forced them to be captive in these poorly run, poor performing, government-run schools,
Especially
public schools.
black and Hispanic
Especially
kids
black
that
and
don't have a
Hispanic.
choice necessarily where
That's
they go
right.
to school.
That's
I
right.
was lucky enough that my parents moved me my mother moved me to a better district, but not everybody has that opportunity.
Yeah, we used to say back when we still were pushing, because we had a bipartisan universal school choice bill submitted for 2 years. We pushed it on Capitol Hill, but you couldn't battle the teacher union dominated Democrats.
Very
So
powerful.
we were dismissed. We did have hearings. They mistreated us terribly. I could go into some long stories on that. And then we just realized it. And we had some national nonprofits and foundations that donated a little money to help our campaign. But we and they saw it's an impossible battle in this state, given the teacher union and political
Well,
climate.
hopefully you can stop that from coming here, what's in California right now. But national, that's a good segue into national politics. So what do you think of the situation with July 13th, the Trump attempted assassination, and how that affects the overall race against Biden?
Well, first let me say, and it's something we've been commenting on, it's not really public policy. There are some policies that fringe, but the level of discourse, the incivility in the discourse, in our political discourse, is not at all shocking to me, because we've been talking about this since we founded the center in 2011. We knew we were in a left-controlled, Democrat-controlled state, So our research and legislative advocacy, we always say all we want to do is have our perspective, our research be part of the debate. We know we're not going to win a lot, but let's at least have lawmakers and public be aware of both sides of the
And
issue.
maybe move a little bit more to the center, right?
Hopefully, that would be the goal. But no more. They don't want to hear it. Like I said earlier, they don't want to hear it anymore. I want our narrative, and we'll find research that supports our narrative and opposes yours, so we don't want to hear it anymore. So I started talking about that 6-7 years ago. Then it turned into, you're evil if you hold a different view, and we'll cancel you
definitely.
if you hold a different
And for
view.
me specifically,
Yes,
you're a white
yes.
supremacist. People have actually called me that. I've had organizations.
Uncle Tom, you've been getting that one?
Uncle Tom. I wish I would have gotten called him Uncle Tom. I've actually been removed from organizations, boards of organizations, for being a conservative.
I'm not surprised.
And I'm like, that's kind of weird, because you would think that the white liberals that attacked me, they would actually be like, hey, this is a Hispanic black man with immigrant parents. Maybe we should actually have him join the discourse. But maybe understand why. Ask him why he feels that way versus just saying he's a white supremacist.
So this cancel culture, the real hate speech that the left throws at us, and the vitriol we see, that's what led to J6, in my view. I don't know much about this
J6,
kid.
yeah, but I'm talking.
I mean J13.
Okay, July 13th.
July
Okay,
13th.
yeah, July
Sorry,
13th.
yep.
Okay, that's
Sorry,
what.
yep,
Okay,
go
so the Biden, all the negativity, saying that he's Hitler and all his followers are Hitler.
You wouldn't be wrong to assume that. We don't know, right? We don't know this kid, the shooter. We don't know him, but yeah, it would be very appropriate to connect the dots, right?
Definitely, yeah, I agree. And on that note, J.D. Vance, we don't really. A lot of people don't know a lot about him. How do you feel about him? Like, we've heard him speak. I know that this is a crypto and blockchain podcast. I know he's seemingly pro crypto. We'll talk about that later. But what do you think of J.D. Vance as a pick? So to carry the torch, because I look at it like this: he was looking for somebody. He only has 4 more years left, right? Most people have the vice presidency for 8 years,
Right.
But since it's like a 4-year term, he has to look at, hey, 4 years from now, who's going to be the next person to carry on my legacy? Do you feel that way about it?
Vance, I liked. I didn't know as much. I was pulling for Marco Rubio as vice president. Actually, back in 2016, I was for Rubio. Before I was for Trump. So I've always liked Marco Rubio. Last night's, and we're recording this the day after Vance spoke at the convention. I get it now. Why he is truly the American dream.
Yes, Midwest. He even wrote a book about like the average American and how
Growing up in
dream is-
poverty in a broken home, drug addicted mom raised by his grandmother. I mean, how many black people do you know in that situation?
And also, his
right?
wife is Indian. I mean,
Yeah,
I personally don't play race politics. Ironic, right? Like the Republicans really
right.
don't. But I like the fact that his wife is Indian. That might
Yeah.
help a little bit as well.
He's the true American story, and it's a fabulous story to tell. Whether he helps with a specific geography or constituency, I don't know. But he is the American dream. He is it.
Okay, so how about Scranton Joe Biden? Isn't he the American dream? That's what the Democrats are telling us.
Scranton Joe Biden has never worked in the private sector. He's never served his country overseas like J.D. Vance has. So no, I think somebody who spent their entire career paid by the government is hopelessly compromised, like we're saying with Joe Biden, regardless of his health or anything else. J.D. Vance, as a Marine who served and fought, as a entrepreneur who grew a business and employed people, and now as a politician, and as you mentioned, a family man, a good dad, married a person of color. I mean, it's just everything America stands for, everything.
Definitely. So laissez-faire, which, by the way, just before we go into that, I've actually traveled a lot of the country, and I've noticed one thing. You may disagree or disagree with me, or some viewers may agree or disagree. I've actually noticed that living in New York City and Rhode Island, we live in more segregated neighborhoods. We have the Dominicans here, the Italians here, the Irish there. When you go to like places like South Carolina, everybody lives in the same neighborhood, and it's very common to see interracial couples. I've never seen so many interracial couples in my life before I went to North Carolina.
Can I tell you a story on that?
Go ahead.
2023, my wife and I went to Atlanta.
Hotlanta.
Hotlanta.
I've been there.
And there's Stone Mountain. You aware of Stone Mountain?
I haven't been to that part, no.
Stone Mountain is basically this giant rock about 10 miles east of Atlanta. I mean, came from outer space, obviously, millions of years ago. It's basically the Confederate Army's Mount Rushmore. It's this giant rock. It's a mile and a half hike up it and down it. It's like a 6 mile walk around it, but carved into the side of it is Jefferson Davis and Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson. So my wife and I said, I can't believe this thing is still up, as politically incorrect as it is, but let's go see it. I've never seen so
As a
many.
northerner saying that, by the way, go
Yeah.
ahead. I just want to put that background in, and I'll explain afterwards.
I have never seen so many African Americans in one place, friendly. Hi, we're walking around. Hi, how you doing? Good day. Enjoying the day. But it was the most, just like you were saying, the South is different.
It's just different.
It's different.
The
And
mentality
it's,
is totally
and it's
different.
wonderful.
Yes, it's so racially integrated, natural. It's like it feels natural there. Here it feels forced.
Yeah. Up here, again, I hate to use labels, but we got to make the point, right? But up here, white person passes black person on the street, they both probably put their head down and look the other way.
It just feels awkward.
Yeah, down there it was I don't want to say a love fest, but it was just so different, so cordial, so welcoming. And yet that's the place where segregation and Jim Crow and slavery exists. It doesn't make sense to me, but it's what it is.
When I first started canvassing 2020 during COVID, I had to get the heck out of New York City. I was making good money at a tech firm doing tech work. And they were like, hey, you want to take a pay cut and travel to Missouri? I was like, sure. They have gyms open, pools open there from what I hear. I was dropped off in an area that was just Confederate flags. So I was like, damn. I was kind of like, wow, this is really nerve-wracking as a northerner. I started knocking on people's doors, and one guy was like, what do you want? In a southern accent. I was like, sir, I'm a Republican. I'm a Trump supporter. I'm just here to see if you support our candidate. And the one thing that shocked me the most was that when I said that, he was like, oh, I'm a Trump supporter too. Opened the door, was very friendly. And I noticed something. Some of the friendliest people I've met around the country own Confederate flags. One of the houses that I went to that had like 20 Confederate flags around it, opened the door, Mexican family. I was like, Mexican-American family with a Confederate flag? This doesn't make any sense. And I took pictures with people that had Confederate flags. And one of the things that I was attacked for when I was called white supremacist, oh, you have pictures on your social media with Confederate flags in the background. And nobody ever asked me, hey, why do you do that? They just went to, you're a white supremacist.
Right.
You support Trump and you're in pictures with Confederate flags. I was like, yes, I'm black and Latino. I also speak, as you know, Mandarin. My ex-wife is Chinese. I'm like, I'm the least racist person you're probably going to meet in your life. My best friend's white. And my family's all Hispanic black.
So it should be. None of that should matter, right?
It shouldn't, but for whatever reason that I don't understand, it does.
Yeah, no, and so down there, it was really a stunning revelation to me. I hate to put a kind of a racial tint to it, but I had to make that point that I still haven't figured it out yet. Why we can't be like that up here?
Because the Democrats don't want us to be like that. Because if you divide people, they're easy to divide and conquer. They're easier to control. When people are united, it's really difficult to control them when they start actually having conversations. What happened with the what was it 2013 the Occupy Wall Street movement?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody. It didn't matter what color you were, right? Everybody was there, and then they started putting in the newspaper, oh, this person's getting shot, and he's black, this, that, and then that's when people started paying attention to that instead of the economic inequalities because of Wall Street.
No, it's the race baiters in the media and the activists. We won't mention names there, but they just won't let it go.
You can mention names with free speech platform here, brother, if you want to. I did on your platform.
No, I know, but I won't because there's really no point. Everyone knows who they were. Just one more thing on that Stone Mountain. You would think, right, that of all places in the world, the one place African Americans would not want to go is to this giant monument that immortalizes these Confederate leaders. But yet, to them, and it's the way it should be. It's just history. It's just old history. It's not going to hurt you. It can't hurt you today. But yet up here, we're trained to be offended by everything, right? And rather than seeing things in proper perspective, we have to put this victim, oppressor versus oppressive lens on everything, and that's why we have this level of non-civil discourse.
All right.
That's going to lead to more violence, like we saw on J13.
Well, thankfully, if you saw President Trump's detail last night or the past couple of days, they've actually grown it and they've gotten rid of the DEI hires. It is what it is. But laissez-faire.
They did do that? I didn't hear that.
Yeah, you should watch it. It's kind of funny. So laissez-faire.
You
believe in laissez-faire economics, right? Like, let the free market dictate prices.
Yeah, largely.
Okay, for the most part.
Yeah,
okay.
Largely, yeah.
So On that note, what do you think of Trump's America's first like international trade policies, where basically, hey, if they're going to tax us, we're going to tax them? Example, China. Is that laissez-faire
That's not laissez-faire. So there are. That's why I said largely there's always exceptions to every
from
rule.
our part or from China's part? Who started the trade war? Let's go back to that. And is Trump justified doing that, being a free trade guy?
I don't know that I don't know that it matters who started it. I don't know that it was retaliatory. Here's what I believe on that. None of us, and this is the problem the left has. They become wedded and loyal to an ideology rather than wedded and loyal to doing what's best for America. So in Trump, let's take the steel tariffs. If we're losing steel jobs and steel industry, it's not just a question of jobs, it's also a question of national security. So it was in America's best interest to impose those tariffs, both economically, industrially, employment-wise, and national security-wise, even if it violated some economic philosophy like laissez-faire or free market capitalism. We have to get our priorities straight. It's about America first, right? It's not about being wedded to some philosophy. So I think, and yes, maybe it raised prices a little bit for steel products across America, but I think, and I know I would, and I think most Americans, I'll pay a little bit more for that refrigerator. I'll
Yeah,
pay
I
a
would
little
too.
bit
Yeah,
more for that car if it means more jobs in America and more national security
and
for our
better
country.
quality as well,
And
better
better, and
quality
probably
products.
better quality. So again, that's why you have to, what's the real priority? Serving the best interests of the people and the families of this state and this country, regardless of any philosophy, has to be your number one goal.
Great. So Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. I'm sure that now you've actually, since we talked a couple of days ago, I'm sure you bought a little bit, right? Hopefully you have. If not, it is what it is.
No, but I got a challenge on that.
You still have time, or we can actually have you download Coinbase live on air if you want to. But before that, Trump, he's speaking at the Bitcoin conference next week in Nashville, Tennessee. You're aware of that, correct?
I was not aware of
Well, it's
that.
the biggest Bitcoin conference in the world. Based on what you know about Trump, and you know that when he first ran, he hated cryptocurrency. It's made out of thin air. Now he's suddenly pro cryptocurrency because he sells NFTs on
Yeah,
basically
yeah.
collectibles on
He
the
and
blockchain.
Melania, yeah.
Melania, it's true, yeah. So, what do you think about that? That Trump switcher? You think it's just political, or you think there's actually something to it? That this is like the new internet?
Yeah, I think a lot of people naturally are skeptical about this new thing that everyone's talking about. I think it's natural to be skeptical, and it appears as if Trump, and I don't know this as a fact, so I can't say, but my position would be just like take sports betting.
Mm-hmm.
I'll come back to crypto. I'll make it
I'm
real
not a
quick.
big bet guy, but a gambling guy. But
So
I understand.
we were still doing legislative work up at Capitol Hill in the state when that bill came up. Do we allow sports betting? And I was actually sitting next to one of the lobbyists who was promoting it. And as it turns out, outside of Speaker Mattiello's office, I was there to talk about something else.
Oh, this was a previous speaker, correct?
Yes, the one we
Oh, okay.
talked about earlier.
Okay, cool. The more moderate conservative one.
I was there to talk about estate tax reform. These other people waiting in the ante room were there to talk about sports betting, and they knew me. They said, "What do you think about sports betting? Should it be legal?" I go, "Yeah, but the government shouldn't control it.
Definitely.
It should be just like everything else. Just let the free market do it. Let people do what they want. You want to put some really high level regulations on it. Like even the free market needs regulations here and there. And that's the same thing with crypto. I think crypto people can take the risk or not, but the government should not control it, and the government certainly should not create their own cryptocurrencies that everyone has to use.
Oh, you mean the CBDC, the central bank
Yes.
cryptocurrency we
Yes.
talked about?
Yes, I'm diametrically opposed to that.
Especially since I told you that's what they use in China now to control people's spending.
See? Yeah,
habits.
you educated me a lot on this. So that would be my general position, and I'm going to guess that's what Trump's position is going to be. Let it be what it's going to be. If we need to regulate it, here some very high, put some really high level safeguards in, but certainly any kind of serious or direct government control has to be discouraged.
Which I told you is uncontrollable, which is actually good.
Right.
But exchange traded funds, ETFs, have changed the game. We had the Bitcoin ETFs. You know what an exchange traded fund is, right? When you go on like this S&P, you basically take a basket
Okay.
of cryptocurrencies.
Oh, okay.
Well, S&P 500, you take a basket of stocks.
Okay.
You group them into one.
Like
right?
a spider account kind of thing,
Yeah, like
mutual
different-
fund, yeah.
So basically, they're doing that with Bitcoin. Like, just for example,
Oh, okay.
they have Bitcoin ETFs now.
Okay.
Grayscale, BlackRock, all the big ones. So they're on the stock market.
Oh,
They trade on the stock market. So people that don't want to actually buy it and self-custody it, put it in their own private wallet, can actually buy it through an intermediary. And there's people actually think it's safer. It's a more traditional way of buying
Sure.
the asset versus just buying it on your own.
Yeah, it's a way to play the whole market instead of one particular, product or company, right?
Yeah. So we had Bitcoin, the biggest, the OG in the field, launched theirs. I believe it was January, the second week of January. Now July 23rd, we have Ethereum, the second biggest cryptocurrency by market cap, launching their exchange traded funds. And Solana, we have the deadline. It's the third biggest one. I believe the deadline is March 22nd or 23rd. Maybe it's not like all there yet. What is your view on that, on the traditional finance sector getting involved in cryptocurrencies?
Um,
You think first, you think it's a good thing or a bad thing? Because you just said that you don't want you don't want cryptocurrency regulated per se.
I think it's a good thing only in the respect if much more knowledgeable about finance people decide it's a place they want to invest and grow, and they're free to do so without any kind of government coercion or too much government regulation, then that's a good thing. And it may or may not work in the end. It may or may not produce returns, but that's the risk of a free market capitalistic system. You take a risk, you either get the returns, or you lose it, or something in the middle. So I don't know enough about any of this to comment about whether it's a good trend or not. But if smart people decide that's worth the risk, then I think they should be allowed to go for it.
It's good for me personally because the more people invest in it, the more the asset grows. That's how the stock market works. That's how the crypto market works as well.
Yeah. Hopefully it can become a major, I know a lot of people invest in it, and hopefully it becomes another one of the pillars of our economy.
And it's not just that; it's blockchain technology itself. What cryptocurrency runs
Which is
on.
the future,
Yeah,
right?
it's great. Like we have a startup where we place people's healthcare records on the blockchain. That's
Right.
how you get access to
Right.
it. Right. You take out your phone
Right.
through biometric scanning, fingerprint, face recognition, QR code pops up. Go into any hospital. On the other end, they can see all past medical data. Can't edit anything, but they can add on for future medical visits.
Can't be destroyed in a fire, can't be erased digitally. It's a beautiful thing, blockchain. I got to ask you this, though. I was thinking about this.
ahead.
I've read some headlines only because that artificial intelligence is so powerful that it could start breaking some of the blockchain encryption. Do you believe that?
Well, Bitcoin is the only technology in human history that has not been hacked. That's unhackable to this day. Could that change in the future? Could the government use quantum computing, put all that power
Right.
towards breaking the
Right.
blockchain? We're yet to find out. But to this day, the best use case for blockchain has been cryptocurrency.
So it's the safest currency out there right now.
Well, to my knowledge, yes, because the U.S. dollar is that a safe currency? It could deflate tomorrow, and
Right.
it could be Argentina. Maybe like a loaf of bread today costs what, like $6-7 with Bidenomics. Maybe tomorrow, it could cost $100 for a piece of bread.
Yep.
So to that we know of.
Well, that's the world we live in, and it's an acceptable risk to most people, right?
It is, but Michael Saylor likes to say, MicroStrategy, the CEO of MicroStrategy, likes to say that. I'm sorry if I offend anybody that's listening to this, but people that save in fiat currency, which is U.S. dollars, the euro, we call them the poor. And that wealthy people are starting to save more and more in Bitcoin because it's a deflationary product. There's only 20. It's very scarce. Only 21 million will ever be made. So RFK, he's a big cryptocurrency and blockchain advocate.
Okay.
And he seems to be more of an old school Democrat for certain things, where he's more like Trump, right?
Yep.
Let's be honest. When Kennedy's giving speeches, it's not what you can do, what your country can do for you. It's what you can do for your country.
Yep.
That sounds like something more that Trump would say than the Biden-Obama machine. So what do you think of RFK, like in general? And do you think that he's going to take more votes away from Biden or from Trump?
Well, it depends how he ends up being portrayed. It's right now too much of our politics is unfortunately determined by the mainstream media. So it depends how he is depicted, I believe, in the media. I believe he is kind of what you said. I believe he is a traditional, honest, patriotic liberal. I believe he's a
A
liberal.
classical liberal.
No, not a classical liberal. Not a classical liberal, I don't think.
You still think he's a little bit progressive, modern day
Yep.
progressive?
Yep, I do. Well, you look at his positions on Second Amendment and
Well, I agree with him.
and
Just
abortion and a few other things.
Yeah.
He certainly holds some mainstream views, but I don't think the 3 or 4 mainstream views he holds are enough to swing me into thinking that he's more of a liberal.
he's
But
not. He's not his uncle, is what you're saying. He's not John F. Kennedy. Is he even a Bill Clinton, or is he more of an Obama?
I think he's more of a JFK. I think JFK was a little bit liberal too, a little bit. But I think JFK might have been a little more moderate. But again, RFK's an honest guy. He believes what he's saying. He's not saying it for political expediency. I don't think he would, like we talked about the other political people compromising their personal beliefs because of political pressure. RFK doesn't do that. He is what he believes, and I respect that about him. And I think he's a patriot. I think he loves America. Unlike a lot of politicians on the left and in the progressives and the Democrats. So I admire RFK, even if I don't agree with most of his positions. So when it comes to the election, if he's positioned as this moderate guy, he's going to take more votes from Trump, I think. If he's positioned where I think he really is, which is kind of this pretty liberal guy, then he's going to take more votes from Biden. And you can see Trump, when he does talk about him, does stress his liberal leanings, and would behoove Trump to try to make him appear more liberal, so that Democrats. And again, I don't think it's going to be Biden. I've been saying it for 2 years. I didn't think it was going to be Biden. And now with the COVID diagnosis, that was a planned step. Trust me, he doesn't have COVID.
Definitely. Okay, so
he don't have COVID.
So who will be the two candidates for the Republican and the Democratic Party going head to head with each other on November 5th on the ballot?
Well, unless Trump is assassinated, it's going to be him. I put out a tweet today. There's not going to be a debate between J.D. Vance and Kamala Harris. It's going to be between J.D.
They already chose.
It's going to be a debate between J.D. Vance and whoever Kamala Harris.
They don't already choose the date like a day ago?
They can't, because they don't know who the Democrat. Listen to me. It's going to be a debate between J.D. Vance and whoever Kamala Harris picks as her VP candidate.
Do you think it'll be Kamala Harris, or do you think they're going to get rid of her? She's very unpopular. She can't speak
but the money.
well.
But the money. They don't have a good option.
Well, they have Gavin Newsom. Listen, I do not like Gavin Newsom's policies, but he is a great politician. When he debated
like I
DeSantis,
said, they don't have a good option.
Check this out. When Gavin Newsom debated DeSantis, he won that debate. Not because he had better policies, but he was really good at lying. I think that people like DeSantis are good. He's a good statesman,
I think
but
people saw right through his phoniness.
Really,
he's a good.
Republicans did, but Democrats didn't. Obviously, in the moderates.
I don't know. I think most Americans saw right through his phoniness. That guy's the biggest phony in the world.
But he can speak very well.
He can speak very well.
Kamala Harris can't. Kamala Harris can't.
But she, you got the political correctness aspect with her, and you got the $200 million that can only go to her in Biden's war chest. So I think she ends up being the nominee. And the question to me is does Biden even serve out the rest of the term? That's going to be.
If they replace her and she's an incumbent, that changes things. But somehow they knew that Biden wasn't well when he ran the first time. They still pushed him through. For some reason I can't understand, I still believe that he's going to come out stronger than ever after this COVID bout, and they're going to just push him right through. If he does stay in the race, you think we're going to have 2 more debates or no?
I mean, if he stays in the race, he's got to do the debates. I mean, otherwise it's a sham. Everyone knows it. If
he does 2 more debates, will he even survive? He could just I hate saying this about a president. I still respect the office of the presidency, but he could just croak over during the debate.
It could. I mean, he looked like he was going to croak over going up those stairs in Air Force One yesterday. Those last 3 steps are really hard for him. I don't think he's going to be the nominee.
Well, anyway, thanks for coming on, Mike. Any last words before we log off?
No, I just look forward to having you back on as our guest and talking more about crypto and blockchain. One thing I want to talk to you about is your the prospect you laid out when you came on my show about Rhode Island possibly looking to become the blockchain capital of America. I think that's a really intriguing. They're trying to get life sciences sector growing here. Maybe, but I think I agree with you. I think blockchain is the future. I think the Republican candidate we had, was it 6 years ago, the guy from Giovanni Ferrosi. You must know him. Do you know him? He was the guy that founded
Candidate for governor?
Yeah, Alex and what is that? Alex
Anani?
He was the founder of Alex Anani.
Oh, okay.
And then
a lot of people don't know that, by the way. Alex Anani, global company. They have offices even in China.
Yeah,
it's a Rhode Island-based company.
Rhode Island-based
in
company.
Cranston, Rhode Island. Well, it was right.
Yeah,
are they still in business or no?
I don't know, but
to our knowledge, if they still are in business, they're based in Cranston, Rhode Island.
He ran in the Republican primary, I think 6 years ago, for governor, and he made blockchain his central theme, but nobody knew what the hell it was. I mean, he called me. We had breakfast here. I said, Gio, I get it that it's the future, but nobody understands it. You can't run on that.
But now you can.
Now maybe you can.
I think that if Trump wins, assuming he wins, he's going to obviously make it a big part of his administration. You know, J.D. Vance is
Yeah.
pro-crypto. He's a crypto
I
whale.
think
You know
that's
what?
smart.
Have you ever heard the term crypto whale?
No.
It means somebody that owns enough of an asset. Let's say they own millions of dollars in it that they sell or buy it, and they can influence the price.
Okay.
That's a crypto whale.
Okay.
It's an analogy for you. But both of them, J.D. Vance and Trump, are crypto whales. But yeah, continue what you were saying, and then after that, what I want to do is, I want you to do your
There's so much to learn. If this is the
Yeah.
future, we gotta all learn about it.
and we'll talk about it live on both our podcasts,
Yeah.
especially as the crypto bull market begins in the next few months. I want you to do that cool swing you do at the end of the show, and then I'll end it with mine's upward and onwards. And then
All
we'll
right,
go from
Zoe, thank you for. I need my baseball. I'll pretend that's a baseball. Hey, thanks for tuning in. Mike Stenhouse from the Dugout. See you next game.
And like I always like to end every podcast show, upwards and onwards. Let's get it.